At first, she was the sweetest old woman I'd ever met. Then I noticed the bruises, the empty fridge, and the truth about her daughter made my blood run cold. I was 19 when I started resenting my grandmother for moving in with us, because that was the year everything in our house changed. Up until that point, me and my mom had been scraping by in our small 2-bedroom apartment with my younger sister Maya. My mom worked double shifts at the diner just to keep the lights on, and I spent most of my time watching Maya while trying to finish my online high school courses. We survived on ramen noodles and generic cereal, and I couldn't remember the last time we had bought anything that wasn't absolutely necessary. But when Grandma Rose moved in after her hip surgery, bringing her Social Security check and Medicare coverage, something shifted. Don't get me wrong, she needed help with everything from getting dressed to making it to the bathroom on time, and her medications filled up half our kitchen counter. But she was family. Her silver hair always smelled like lavender, and she would hum old songs while I helped her with her physical therapy exercises. So, when she was settled in for 2 months, I decided to start a house cleaning business. Nothing too ambitious. I just knew there were plenty of elderly people in our neighborhood who needed help maintaining their homes but couldn't afford the big cleaning companies. I started small, charging $30 for a basic clean with a limit of 3 houses per week. My sister Maya, who had just turned 16, helped me out after school and took 25% of the earnings. By the end of the first month, I was holding more cash than I had seen in years. We were amazed, so much so that we expanded our services to include grocery shopping and light meal preparation. Maya had a natural talent for organizing, and the elderly clients loved her cheerful personality. We were up to 6 regular clients when the problems started, or more specifically, when I met Mrs. Eleanor Patterson. She was 82 years old, white hair, blue eyes, very soft-spoken, the type who apologized for asking me to move a chair so I could vacuum underneath it. When her daughter Linda first hired me, she handed over the house key with her arm extended as far as possible, her face twisted in obvious disgust. As she gave me the instructions, she would step back toward the door, as if she couldn't wait to escape. I could never understand her attitude, though. Mrs. Patterson was actually one of the sweetest clients I worked with. She always thanked me, never complained about anything, and had the most beautiful smile. But on my 3rd visit to her house, I noticed something disturbing. As Mrs. Patterson tried to stand up from her chair, I saw that her legs were covered in large, dark bruises. They looked fresh, purple, and black against her pale skin. I didn't know much about elder care at that point, so I gently asked if she had fallen recently. Fallen. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Linda says I fall all the time, but I don't remember falling. She said it with such confusion, as if she was trying to solve a puzzle she couldn't understand. I felt my stomach turn as I realized something was very wrong. When I went to help her to the bathroom, I noticed her wrists had red marks around them, like rope burns. So I took a closer look around the house and found other disturbing signs. The refrigerator was nearly empty except for expired milk and moldy bread. Mrs. Patterson's prescription bottles were lined up on the counter, but many of them were completely full despite being weeks old. I couldn't give her medication because I wasn't qualified, but I did make her a proper sandwich with groceries I bought with my own money. She ate it so quickly that I realized she was probably hungry most of the time. After she finished eating, tears started rolling down her cheeks. Linda says the food is too expensive, but I get so hungry. She touched my hand with her frail fingers, and I could feel how thin she had become. The next day, I decided to arrive earlier than scheduled. I used my key to enter quietly, and what I heard made my blood run cold. Linda was screaming at Mrs. Patterson in the kitchen, her voice filled with rage. "You're nothing but a burden. Why won't you just die already?" The words echoed through the house, followed by the sound of something being thrown. I crept closer and saw Linda grabbing Mrs. Patterson roughly by the arm, shaking her. "I'm tired of taking care of you," Linda shouted, her face red with anger. "You're costing me everything, and for what? So you can sit here and drool all day?" Mrs. Patterson was crying softly, trying to pull away from her daughter's grip. I'm sorry," she kept repeating, her voice barely a whisper. That's when I knew I had to act. I pulled out my phone and dialed the Adult Protective Services hotline. "There is an elderly woman who is being abused by her daughter," I said, my voice shaking with emotion. The caseworker listened as I described what I had witnessed and the signs of neglect I had observed. "Can you see any immediate injuries on her?" she asked, taking notes. "She has bruises on her legs and marks on her wrists. She's malnourished and not receiving her medications properly. The refrigerator is empty, and her daughter screams at her and handles her roughly. We'll send someone out for a welfare check within 24 hours, the caseworker assured me. "Thank you for calling." Most people don't want to get involved in family situations. After I hung up, I felt both relieved and terrified. I knew I had done the right thing, but I also knew there would be consequences. I decided to clean the house as quietly as possible and leave before Linda returned. But the next morning, Linda was waiting for me when I arrived. Her eyes were cold and calculating as she blocked the doorway. "The social worker told me someone called in a report about my mother," she said, her voice dangerously calm. I played innocent, suggesting that maybe a neighbor had been concerned, but Linda wasn't fooled. She studied my face carefully, then smiled in a way that made my skin crawl. "You know what I think? I think my mother's little cleaning girl has been spreading lies about our family." Her voice was sweet, but her eyes were full of malice. I tried to deny it, but she cut me off. "Well, if that's the case, then I guess we don't need your services anymore. And I'll be sure to let everyone in the neighborhood know why." She slammed the door in my face, and I heard her lock it from the inside. As I walked back to my car, I could hear Mrs. Patterson crying softly somewhere in the house. The sound broke my heart, but I knew the investigation would help her now. 2 days later, things got much worse. Linda had been busy spreading her version of the story throughout the neighborhood. She told everyone that I had been stealing from her mother, that I had been rough with Mrs. Patterson, and that I had made false reports to cover up my own misconduct. My phone started ringing with cancellations. Mrs. Henderson, who had been one of my favorite clients, called with tears in her voice. "I'm so sorry, dear, but I just can't take any chances with my safety." Linda showed me photos of bruises on her mother and said you caused them. By the end of the week, we had lost 4 of our 6 clients. The remaining 2 were family friends who knew us well enough to doubt Linda's accusations, but even they seemed nervous and watched me more carefully than before. Maya was devastated. "We did the right thing, and now we're being punished for it," she said, pacing around our small living room. "We should fight back, tell everyone what really happened." But it wasn't that simple. Linda had been strategic, getting ahead of the story and painting herself as the victim. She claimed that I had been abusing her mother and then called social services to deflect suspicion from myself when she discovered the mistreatment. Our income disappeared almost overnight. We were back to counting every penny and worrying about how to pay rent. The brief taste of financial stability made its loss even more painful. Grandma Rose, seeing our distress, offered to contribute more of her Social Security check, but we couldn't take money she needed for her medications. I found myself lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling and wondering if I had made a terrible mistake. Maybe I should have minded my own business. Maybe I had misunderstood what I saw and heard. But then I would remember Mrs. Patterson's tears as she ate that sandwich, her confusion about falling, the fear in her eyes when Linda screamed at her. I knew I couldn't regret trying to help her, even if it cost us everything. 3 weeks later, the APS caseworker called with an update. "Mrs. Patterson has been removed from the home and placed in a quality-assisted living facility," she said. "We found evidence of financial exploitation, medical neglect, and emotional abuse." The relief in her voice matched what I felt in my chest. The daughter had been using her mother's Social Security and pension checks for her own expenses while keeping the mother on a starvation budget. The medical neglect was severe. Mrs. Patterson hadn't been receiving most of her medications for months. At least something good had come from all this chaos. But our reputation in the neighborhood remained damaged. Linda continued her campaign against us, now claiming that we had tried to extort money from her in exchange for not reporting the abuse. Some neighbors avoided eye contact when they saw us. Others whispered behind their hands and pointed. The grocery store clerk, who had always been friendly, now watched us suspiciously as if we might steal something. Maya suggested we move to a different neighborhood and start over, but we couldn't afford to relocate. Besides, running away felt like admitting we had done something wrong when we knew we hadn't. Then came the breaking point. Maya and I were at the community center picking up groceries from the food bank when we overheard 2 women talking in the next room. Their voices carried through the thin walls, and we froze when we heard our names. "I heard those cleaning girls actually hurt that poor old woman," one said with absolute certainty. The daughter showed me pictures of terrible bruises on the mother's arms and legs. "I always thought something was suspicious about them," the other replied. "Living in that tiny apartment, suddenly starting a business, probably needed money for who knows what." Maya couldn't stand it anymore. She marched into the room where the women were sorting donated clothes. "Would you like to hear what really happened?" she asked, her voice steady despite her anger. The women looked surprised, clearly not expecting to be confronted. Before they could respond, Maya pulled out her phone and played a recording she had made during one of our visits to Mrs. Patterson's house. We had started recording our interactions with difficult clients for our own protection, and the audio clearly captured Linda screaming at her mother in the background while we worked in another room. The women listened with growing shock as Linda's voice came through the speaker, filled with hatred and cruelty. "She's been lying to everyone," Maya said when the recording ended. "We reported her for abuse, and this is her revenge. Those bruises appeared after we stopped cleaning the house. Think about it." The women exchanged uncomfortable glances, their previous certainty shaken. "Why haven't you shown this to everyone before?" one asked. Maya looked directly at both women. "We are now, starting with you two." Word spread quickly after that. Maya had made copies of the recording and shared them with key people in the neighborhood. We also provided a copy to the APS caseworker in case Linda tried to blame us for Mrs. Patterson's injuries. Slowly, people began to see the truth. Clients who had canceled our services reached out to apologize and ask if we could resume cleaning for them. The grocery store clerk smiled at us again and asked how our grandmother was doing. Even some people who had never used our services before started calling, having heard about how we had stood up for an abused elderly woman despite the personal cost. But Linda wasn't finished with her revenge. She escalated her accusations, now claiming that we were running some kind of scam targeting vulnerable seniors. She said we gained their trust and then systematically robbed them while they were helpless. The accusations were so extreme that most people dismissed them immediately, but a few troubling individuals believed her stories. They would drive by our apartment building slowly, watching us with suspicious eyes whenever we left. Anonymous phone calls brought police officers to our door twice, though they always left after brief conversations. The officers seemed skeptical of the complaints, but they had to follow up on every report. One evening, someone threw eggs at our apartment windows while we were inside having dinner. The shells cracked against the glass, and the mess dripped down like tears. Grandma Rose was terrified by the sudden noise, and Maya had to help calm her down. We were trapped in a nightmare created by someone else's lies, all because we had tried to protect a helpless elderly woman. Maya and I took turns staying awake at night, checking the locks and listening for any unusual sounds outside. Then, unexpectedly, vindication came from Mrs. Patterson herself. The assisted living facility had been working with her to improve her health and cognitive function. With proper nutrition and medication, her confusion had cleared significantly, and she remembered much more than Linda had claimed. Mrs. Patterson asked to speak with the APS caseworker about the young women who had been cleaning her house. She wanted to thank us and set the record straight about what had really happened in her home. The caseworker arranged a meeting at the community center, where Mrs. Patterson stood before a group of our neighbors and told the truth. She explained how we had always been gentle and kind, how we had bought her food with our own money, and how we had been the only people who seemed to care about her well-being. "Those girls never hurt me," she said, her voice stronger than I had ever heard it. "They saved me. My daughter was the one who hurt me, who screamed at me, who wouldn't let me eat or take my medicine properly." She described how Linda had isolated her from friends and neighbors, how the abuse had gotten worse over the months before we started cleaning the house. They were the first people to notice something was wrong and do something about it. Her testimony silenced the room. Several neighbors began crying as they realized how wrong they had been about us. The weight of Mrs. Patterson's words settled over everyone present, and I could see the shame on faces of people who had believed Linda's lies. Linda didn't attend the meeting. We later learned that she had left town immediately after Mrs. Patterson was removed from her care, probably fearing criminal charges for the financial exploitation and abuse. Her apartment was found empty, with unpaid bills scattered on the counter and her belongings abandoned. Our reputation was restored almost overnight. New customers called daily, having heard about our integrity and willingness to put elderly clients' welfare above our own business interests. Within 6 weeks, we had 12 regular clients and a waiting list of people who wanted to hire us. The income was more than we had ever dreamed of, and we were able to help Grandma Rose with her medical expenses while still saving money for our future. Maya enrolled in a certified nursing assistant program at the community college, inspired by our experience with Mrs. Patterson. I started taking business courses online, determined to expand our services properly and legally. The textbooks were expensive, but every page taught us something valuable about caring for elderly clients, managing finances, and running an ethical business. We learned about signs of abuse and neglect, proper documentation, and when to involve authorities. Grandma Rose, seeing our success and newfound purpose, became our unofficial advisor. Her experience as a senior citizen helped us understand what our clients really needed, and her wisdom guided us through difficult decisions. 1 year after we first met Mrs. Patterson, we received a card from her at the assisted living facility. The photo inside showed her sitting in a garden, surrounded by flowers, her face healthy and glowing with happiness. She looked like a completely different person from the frightened, malnourished woman we had first encountered. "Thank you for giving me my life back," the card read in her careful handwriting. "You will always be my angels." The simple message brought tears to my eyes, confirmation that all the struggle and hardship had been worthwhile. Maya framed the card and hung it in our small office, a reminder of why we had started this business in the first place. Whenever we face challenges with difficult family members, complex client needs, or the endless paperwork of running a legitimate business, we would look at that card and remember what truly mattered. We had learned that sometimes the right thing is also the hardest thing, but it's always worth doing. As for me, I look at Grandma Rose every day and remember how I once resented her moving in with us, how her arrival seemed like just another burden in our already difficult lives. Instead, she became the inspiration for everything good that followed. Her needs taught me about elder care and opened my eyes to how many seniors were struggling alone. Sometimes the things we think we don't want are actually the beginning of our greatest purpose. And sometimes standing up for what's right, even when it costs us everything, leads us exactly where we're meant to be. The business we built from that first crisis now employs 8 people and serves over 50 elderly clients throughout the city. We've prevented 3 other cases of elder abuse, helped dozens of seniors age safely in their homes, and built a reputation as advocates for those who cannot advocate for themselves. Maya graduated from her nursing program with honors and now oversees the medical aspects of our care services. I completed my business degree and handle the administrative side, but we both still clean houses and spend time with clients because that personal connection is what makes our work meaningful. Mrs. Patterson visits our office sometimes, bringing homemade cookies and updates about her life at the assisted living facility. She has made friends, joined activities, and regained the joy that Linda had tried to steal from her. Every time I see her smile, I'm reminded that doing the right thing isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. And sometimes the people we save end up saving us right back.